From Southern California, this is The Circle of Insight, a show about everything in psychology. Hear the latest in news and views on psychology. Our motto is simple: wherever there is psychology involved, we are there. And now, here's your host of The Circle of Insight, Carlos Vasquez.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today we're going to be exploring cybercrime with Mr. Ricardo Baretzky. He is the president of the European Center for Information Policy and Security, as well as the interim president of Cyberpol. Welcome, Mr. Baretzky, to the Circle.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me on your show.
Well, this is a big issue. It seems a lot of people are being affected. I know I was reading an article that you were in that talked about the prevalence of cybercrime, especially malware attacks. I think it was said 93% of all computer users?
That's correct. In the beginning of this year at the Counterterrorism Summit in London, we made a prediction for this year based on previous year figures that we should we estimated 93 to 94% of all computers should be infected during the course of this year. Astonishingly, Vision released their figures last week. It turns out 92%, according to their figures, was correct. We missed it with 1%. And there is even estimates that it could have been over 94% by other organizations. So if you have a computer, a laptop, or any government or public computer, you more than likely was infected at least once during the year with some kind of malware spyware.
And what does the malware really do?
Well, you get different kinds of malware software, but it takes data. Some can take your information, your trends on internet, where you go. Some can take information such as your MAC address, certain information, maybe ID information. The most common is ID theft and credit card theft. Which is the one that consumers should really be aware of when you're on internet. Try to avoid your computer or using your credit card on a computer. But that's a basic outline of it. And criminals that prey on the financial market, they see this as a business. So the more credit card information they steal, of course, the more money they make.
And how do they normally, insert this malware into the computer? Is it via email, websites?
Well, there's different varieties of capabilities. Emails is some, anonymous emails. Many people get phishing emails. At this moment, there's more people receiving on a daily basis the phishing emails, which is intended to phish information from your computer as you type it. That's the most common one. These days, there's websites that looks like official websites. It's becoming a real big problem in the internet. And if you visit a website, it's very difficult to verify if that website is authentic. Even if the traditional system on the internet will tell you it's authentic, doesn't mean it's an authentic website. I always advise the consumer, the company registration, make sure the company is indeed registered. And there's a whole range of capabilities on the internet today.
That's kind of scary. I knew this interview would be scary, and it's starting off that way. Before I get to more scary topics, you mentioned banking. How safe is it to bank online?
Well, this is a very good question. In fact, there was an article today released by the Internet or the Security for Internet Services in Europe, indicating there's been a flaw in the secure SSL websites. Everybody's familiar when you go to a website. Well, it's best to go to a website that has a certificate. But now they've discovered they might not be safe at all. And banking industry is the one that's the hardest affected by it and the least talked subject about it. Last year alone, we estimated over $3 billion was lost in banking theft alone in Europe. The total market for internet crime estimated at $535 billion last year alone. And that is only that what we know of. So the banking industry is only one facet of the whole problem, but it's certainly one of the ones being hit the hardest in the cybercrime.
That's another scary thought too. Now you work extensively, I think, with Borderpol.
That's right, Border Police. Yes, Borderpol, the international organization. They're one of our affiliates that works closely with Cyberpol, focusing on organized crime and specifically at the border police, border checkpoints, which is now, in our opinion, becoming probably the number one topic in the arena.
Yeah, what is going on there? I'm trying to get my head around that. How does cybercrime fit into the border?
Well, if you look at the figures of free Wi-Fi, and many people is probably not aware of this, but we have thousands of border points and airports around the world. Most of them provide free Wi-Fi, but now the latest trends is that there's a lot of phony Wi-Fi hotspots detected at airports. That means they are ineffectively wired through a mobile phone or a computer that might be on, and they pretend to be a legitimate Wi-Fi hotspot. Now, when you travel at the airport, you use your credit card and you use your identity information. And that's the best way to get the information from the individual. So criminals has realized this. It's becoming a big organized crime. And it poses a major threat to national security, not only in Europe, but also in the U.S.
Wow. That's really scary. So on the fact of that, you watch, so sometimes I don't know what you watch over there, but we watch a lot of crime shows here, kind of addicted here in America. And sometimes you see these people with their phones and they're able to go and catch onto somebody else's phone and take over and at least look at all the data. Is that possible?
Well, it's possible in a very easy way. There's software you can download. You can buy software as little as $20, $25.
Wow.
That can hack any phone around you within 100 or 200 meters radius. Imagine you sit in an airport and there's someone who's downloaded the software, he bought it, and he can literally hack any phone that's live. It's got a Wi-Fi capability. What he could do with that kind of tools, you know. You must remember, today's criminals are experts. Many of them in the computer industry has got PhD degrees. They're not people from the ordinary criminal chain we know. So in the last 3-4 years, everything has changed in the cybercrime industry.
So a lot of the criminals are actually PhDs in computers?
Well, you need to have a sophisticated skills in order to do this kind of hacking.
Wow.
And you have to have the training. And this training requires a certain qualification in some sense, not necessarily at the university, but it is equivalent to be able to do the job. And just remember, today hacking has become a multi-billion-dollar business.
Multi-billion?
It's a multi-billion-dollar business. It's wow. Easy money for criminals. You can put yourself in the shoes of the person who's capable of doing the job. He doesn't really care who he works for. He's anonymous. He sits maybe anywhere in the world. It's hard to track him. He knows how to cover his tracks, and he's willing to do the job for anybody who can pay him. So this is a problem you have when it comes to educating the criminal, because you have to educate the industry, but at the same time, from the industry, it breeds a different breed of criminality.
That's a big problem. Big problem.
Absolutely.
So now we got the hacking. We know these individuals can take information phone to phone. You said 200 meters away. What is the world of the deep web? How does that play into all the cybercrime issues?
Well, the deep web is, a lot of people is not aware of the deep web's existence, or the dark web, as also known. Recently, a few years ago, it was estimated that the deep web or the dark web is as much as 5,000 times the size of the ordinary web people knows. Now, very few people has actually. Yes, 5,000 times. That was estimated in 2006. But Cyberpol has recently done a new study with exclusive team. And we think it could be as much as close to 20,000 times the size of the existing web. Now, you have to remember, governments, all the data of governments is actually hosted on the deep web. So it's one of the main problems governments is going to face in the future, because they can't shift it from there to the cloud. If they do shift it to the cloud, then it becomes more open source rather than secure. So what was meant to be a secure underground web capability is actually turned rather against the industry and against government. Now, the criminals can go on there. They have their own underground shopping centers. We call it shopping centers in quotes. There, you can buy anything from a stolen credit card to a stolen car or whatever you need. You can, for example, go on Tor, the platform Tor, which is known for surfing on the deep web or the underground web. This is a real problem, because even though you shut one link down, there's 1,000 links that pops up straight away. It's almost impossible to shut that system down, because you can't really trace. There's limited space of tracing where it is. It's like looking for a needle in a haystack. And that's the reality of the dark web. So for criminals, that is the hive where all the business takes place. And it's at this moment, in order to stop it, it has to be shut down, and it can't be shut down.
So it's a
big problem.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. At this moment, as I said, it's a very, very big problem, particularly for law enforcement, because law enforcement in itself, many of the law enforcement officers are unaware that there is even a dark web. Now, the dark web was mostly established for different purposes, to have information but not visible. But when it becomes visible, it means it's no longer safe. And when all government information that is surfacing on the web is stored in the dark web, it becomes a serious risk. Imagine all the social security numbers is on the dark web. What problem that poses if it's hacked? And I think you can just imagine by that phrase alone.
That actually brings me to a couple other questions.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
We've seen in some movies, we've seen in some TV shows, the big threat they always say is the ability to hack into the power grids and take over or shut them down. Is that plausible?
Very plausible. We have incidences occurring more and more and more. For example, last year, I can recall a specific incident that was quite astonishing, in fact. I don't know if you know, the White House was under major DDoS attack. The computers were infiltrated. I don't think it was very widely known, although it was widely known in Europe in some media. This year we had some of the governments in Europe, including the Belgian government's computers hacked. It took them 8 months to clear their system.
8 months?
8 months.
Wow.
Now, if you're a terrorist organization, you target infrastructure, critical infrastructures. The danger with this positioning we face now, with the cybersecurity threats, is that terrorists is getting also acquainted with this capability. And thus it poses a major threat if they can access a grid and shut it down. And this is going to happen. It's only a matter of time till the big threat becomes a reality. So we are urging very much the implementation of more stricter regulations on web surfing as a result of these potential problems. But in the essence, the possibility of shutting down an entire grid is a real threat that has happened already in the past, and it will happen in the future. The danger is when the terrorist coordinates their capabilities and they implement such a capability, it could effectively set us back a few years back in the dark ages if that had to happen. So it's a threat that bothers everybody, including every single national intelligence agency. So, and it's a threat that's here to stay, as long as we have the internet.
Let me, well, I'll make the glass half full a little bit later. But for right now, I'll continue on some of these scary thoughts. China and Russia, they've been accused a lot of trying to hack into our systems, and some say they hack each other, some say we hack them. What can you tell us about all this hacking going on between these three big countries?
Well, an interesting figure that we recently came to learn about ourselves was the daily amount of hacks. At the moment, we have to understand that from the 10 million hacks on a daily basis, we estimate, not all of them is actually between countries, and this is what makes it really complex. I'm going to give you a good scenario. If a terrorist organization test the waters and they, for example, use an airport, they use maybe 5 chain airports in a row, it's very difficult to link them. And at the same time, it could make it look, for example, if China is attacking Russia or the US, while the perpetrator is in fact from another country completely. So it's very difficult to define whether these attacks is rather very real. One thing is for sure that they are increasing and they have reached astronomical figures. The importance of this is that it's very well believed that terrorist organizations is finding new ways and exploiting the ability to hack cross-border from anonymous points. And maybe I can give you a small scenario. If you have a terrorist who has a very clean background, is not known, maybe educated at a university, dressed very well, having random flights over 3 days between 4 countries. If he had access to Wi-Fi and had the know-how, not necessarily the capability, but the know-how, the knowledge, how to do, they could very easily hack through the airports at different point, for example, New York to Russia, Russia to China, China to Russia, Russia to New York. And it would look like a government attack, while it is in fact a terrorist attack. And that's where the real importance lays, is to understand the difference between warfare and gaming warfare and that of terrorist warfare. And at the moment, it's very unclear where these two meet. But we know these 2 points is meeting at some point, and they are more than likely to increase.
It sounds very complex. Let's
well,
look.
the cyber
Go ahead.
industry is very, very, at the moment, as you correctly mentioned, is very complex in the model, to understand the model and the architecture of how this is working.
You're definitely right. We have a few minutes left for you to answer 3 questions. We're putting you to the test here, Mr. Baretzky. One quick question is, military seems to be using this. I remember in the Wall Street Journal, I think a couple of years ago, Israel used cyber hacking against Iran in regards to their nuclear program. Any comments about behaviors like that going on? I mean, obviously you're in the cyber police, so we don't want to name names if we don't have to, but...
Military warfare in the cyber industry is not new. It's been going for a long time. It is a threat, depending on what level of threat it might pose and for which purpose. But at this moment, even though we have the international problems that's arising in the Middle East, particularly that of Russia and the world, it's a very common phenomenon for governments to attack the opposition to acquire data rather than shutdowns. You understand? So the perception is rather from acquiring information and technology, or IPO, rather than the traditional warfare. The importance is to understand when terrorists begin to use that system against the system itself. With other words, they acquire military level or MOD level capability of infiltration. And that is the real importance for the corporations and governments to understand, because that leads to a very negative position and also potentially a major security risk on the international scale, not on the national scale.
Last two questions. Can we use cyber hacking for a positive? In other words, can we go and attack terrorist groups and hack into their systems? Are we even doing that?
Well, this is a very good question that you ask. What is the hacker? And where does a hacker come from? We know a lot of people knows of the black hat hackers. We call them the black hat hackers. They are the bad guys, the guys who does everything and when they can. And then we get the hacker, which is called a gray hat hacker. He's the guy who's supposed to come clean. But the problem you have is you have the guy come clean, and he still continues to do the bad stuff too. And you can't trace him, and he's anonymous, even if he could be in the same office as the official. Now we call them the double hat hackers.
The double hat hackers.
We call them, that's our definition of this type of hacker. And we have seen an increase in this type of hackers. So the days where law enforcement can go to the hacker and say, well, now we give you immunity if you work for us and you teach us the know-how, I think those days is finished. Because we have created a situation where these hackers have learned the skill and capability of both law enforcement and opposition. And when these hackers begins to rent their services to criminals for major criminal activity, cross-border crime, and cybercrime in particular, they don't have to exercise their skills only online. There's ways and means that they can exercise their skills offline. That means the cyber hacker doesn't have to always be online to execute his criminality. And that's the most difficult part for the law enforcement to understand as a whole, is how the functioning structure works of these criminals in this case.
That sounds like a very complex, very difficult issue. Last question for our last minute here. What would be one or two tips you can give everybody out there in the public? We always try to provide education and awareness. What would be a couple of tips you would give the public right now?
Well, if you're a computer, which most people have, don't leave any of your information on the computer. Make sure you wipe it, you check it regularly with the correct software. Don't just trust any software out there. There's many softwares designed to steal the information rather than actually taking it off. And acquire the right know-how. Be knowledgeable. Don't go and buy things on the internet, or don't just communicate with people you don't know. And make sure that the people you do communicate with is people that you could trust.
Thank you so much, Mr. Baretzky, for that great insight. If you want to learn more about it, you can see CyberPol. You can get more information about cybercrime. We thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope you enjoyed the show as much as I did. Remember, our motto is simple. Wherever there's psychology involved, we are there. We'll see you next time, everyone.